Yes, good morning, viewer, wherever you are following us from. This is UBC, and today we come to you again, another good Friday. Kampala is a good morning. It's a hot, the weather is a bit hot, but the morning has been good. We come to you with this program of Pan-African Friday. This program comes to you every Friday, discussing issues that concern us, the people who are in this continent of Africa, and those of us who are living outside of Africa. I know there are people who are following us from elsewhere, not necessarily only in Africa. I know we have Pan-African groups that are following us from De Janeiro. I have also had people who are following us all the way from the US and other parts of the continent and of the world rather. So we are very happy and always pleased to be with you as you give us more information and also views about some of the things that we talk here. Not that we are experts in the African issues, but you also have information out there which once in a while we have shared, and it has been also a pleasure to us to always hear from some of our viewers. Today in the studio, my name is James Mututa, and I'm accompanied by the usual panelists, Ndugu Rugarama and Sister Tagali. We shall be looking at a number of issues that concern us as the African people. But before we do that, normally every week and every episode, we begin with what has been blending, what has been happening on this continent of Africa. And to do that, I will begin with Ndugu Rugarama to take us how his week of Africa in the African perspective has been. So Ndugu Rugarama, let's share with you about what you have seen on the continent.
Thank you so much, dear comrades in the studio and our brothers and sisters outside the studio. Good morning once again, and salutations to all those who are in different time zones. Our brother Keide Audo Obi is on the set from USA. I hope he will be joining us. The week, I was talking to my colleagues in Nigeria, and I think they are just left with about a week or so to go to the polls. The atmosphere is very charged. I just narrowly missed observing those elections. But I'm told that the current leadership is fast-tracking the change of currency simply because they suspect that there is too much money that is changing hands. And I found that very intriguing because it may set a precedent that if you suspect that your opponent or the person you may not want but who is well oiled or maybe has been sponsored is bringing in a lot of money to change the direction of the electorate, then the wisest thing is to change the currency and freeze out whatever he may be intending to do. That was one strange thing on the African continent. I want to believe probably it is for good reasons. I have not addressed my mind deeply into that, but from the surface, that's the kind of impression that somebody would get. I was also hit strong by the news that Stanbic Bank, I think it's Stanbic Bank, you will remind me, yes. The insiders, with collaboration with the outside world, hit it by siphoning out close to 9 billion shillings. And that, of course, speaks to our moral turpitude as a society. Not that it is the first thing that has happened. There was something to do with the MTN, a group of workers, insiders, collaborating with the outside. They hit MTN. Of course, MTN and other companies, be it Airtel, they also have their own troubles. They may be also hitting others through ways we don't see. but one wrong does not solve the other. And I found that also very disturbing, because as a struggling economy, and as we try to get back to our feet, we cannot afford to have that kind of reoccurrence of unfortunate episodes. I also, within this week, we witnessed the graduation. I'm glad that there are a number of universities in Uganda, because the growth of universities and other higher institutions of learning is one of the indicators of development. Of course, we can have another full day discussing the nitty-gritties, especially the quality of those that come out of those institutions. But my take on that is that whereas we are experiencing increased numbers that are churned out by our universities and other high institutions of learning, we must be mindful, and this goes to our planners, of what Uganda and Africa as a continent relies on in as far as preparing ourselves, bettering our lives, our economies. What do we rely on? So our cooperative advantage must be integrated in the education, and like Malaysia did, I think it is high time that we emphasize the skills, that even if you are a lawyer, even if you're a teacher, even if you're a medical doctor, you have got that versatility, the ability, the flexibility when a need arises to be able to contribute, maybe in agriculture, maybe, because I want to believe that the what we would call like what Korea, majority of these tiger economies, what they have and what has made their economies what they are, to a point that they are being referred to as the tiger economies, is that they emphasize the skills and the concept of you are a friend, Mututa, of Korea, which they call South Korea. I get trouble trying to differentiate the two. I mean, this is the same, it's just Korea. Yeah. But somebody wants us to have the two Koreas. Anyhow, the point I'm making is that we have got to make a deliberate effort as we increase the numbers of products from our universities and other related tertiary institutions. We integrate what makes Africa Africa. If we must prepare this continent to another level, if we must be part, as is espoused in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, yes, that our products must have a component within their course of study to make sure that we are part of the development process that is espoused in Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Rachel.
For me, concerning the more notable developments around us, has been the meeting of finance ministries, among others, where the officers in charge of climate financing are meeting for a second day, not far from here, in Entebbe actually. And there they will be finding ways to actually source money for a cause that has become front and center of human existence, that is climate and related developments. They also are concretizing the networking concerning exactly how to access this kind of money, because coming out of the Cairo conference on climate not very long ago, they identified that one of the stumbling blocks in the efforts of countries such as these ones and most of Africa is that the monies that are required to actually make meaningful interventions in climate change are not readily accessible. Or if they are, the interest on these monies is untenable. So these East African countries in particular are at it, actually working to make this document or the agreements they came to see the light of day. But also the revenue chiefs around here, East Africa, are also meeting in the same area, still not far from here. And theirs is to see how to actually increase what these bodies collect. We know that Uganda in particular has a much lower than average collection rate as in relation to GDP. I think it hovers about 14%, or when the average on the African continent is at least 4 percentage points higher. So this speaks to the fact that the peoples of East Africa are very much sold on the idea that our collective troubles can also be solved most demonstrably in a collective fashion. And that is a good thing.
Yeah, because the most important thing is to have a dream. You may not get it exact, but at least there's the will that eventually you'll end up. And also, if the East African countries can move ahead and fast with the establishment of the East African Central Bank, and then of course that will be towards the common currency for the East African region. Of course, there are already people talking that this is going to be, I think, the biggest economy that will have existed, given the numbers, but also at the same time, you know,
the joining. If for instance we get, permit me, if for instance we get Somalia, as surely we shall get,
yes,
then Sudan, the Sudan now, the Khartoum,
yeah,
and even if we stopped there, and these other, what we are already,
yeah,
we shall be, I think, should be within among the first 4, 5
yes,
largest countries in as an entity, geographical
yes,
entity on the globe.
You know, and I think we'll have some time and talk about these things. Can you imagine that up to now we still believe that Africa is some small part of the world down somewhere there, because that is what we are told. So even with these numbers, some people somewhere, I don't know why the rest of the world is so allergic to something coming out of Africa. Now even that one raises a number of eyebrows. Then you wonder, why? But I think, like I've been always talking, it's not the problem is that it is not that someone doesn't want us, wish us well, but it is us ourselves sometimes who are not pushing to ensure that our wishes are actually actualized. At the same time, I think for me, what I've been interested in, and what has interested me more this week, been following up the issues at the African Union. I think as we speak, there are 3 sessions. There was the session of the permanent representatives. Then there was there is a session of the ministers, foreign ministers, and now we're having the session of the heads of state, which I think kicks off right away today or yesterday. And we expect that from this session, maybe something will come up, especially to do with Africa's foreign policy, so that Africa can have at least an influence and can take a stake in the global issues. It is coming at the time when we're having, of course, this war going on in Ukraine and Russia, but also the dwindling economic issues globally. So I think, I guess that the African leaders are going to sit down and look at some of these issues critically, and look at possibilities of how Africa can navigate through these muddy waters into the next level. But also it will come with a number of challenges we have had, especially from the of the western part of Africa, the issues between the countries there and the France. because I've seen a lot of exchanges, the recalling of ambassadors and sending away of the French ambassadors. So I think that's also going to be one of the issues to be discussed, and this is going to be 36th session of the heads of state, the Executive Council of the African Union. And something that has, not by the way actually, but something that I looked at and I was it funny? Is it this lady, the senator of Kenya, who I think it was a claim.
It was despicable.
Yes, saying.
I think maybe our sister will have something to say about it. But personally, as first of all, from where I sit as a Pan-Africanist, as a husband, as a father to a girl child or children who are girls, as somebody who interfaces with various people and the women, inclusive that female gender, I found the statements, a statement made by the female representative in the Senate, Kenyan Senate, very repulsive. I didn't get to understand as to why, if your colleague, a female, has, because it can happen, when you it happens. It happens yes. Actually. You do not expect your periods, and you don't even realize it has happened.
Exactly.
Only to be shocked when you are in such an environment, and a number of reasons can cause that. But that is not what would have constituted a problem. What became a problem to me is that a fellow woman who, and educated at that level with that exposure, who should observe high degree of decorum, is the one who went to the podium to bring that unfortunate occurrence in the circumstances, I mean, to the public, to the entire house. What was wrong with that particular senator to call or move to a sister and say, this has happened quietly? Can I please even escort you to the ladies, such that, you know, and nobody will come to get to know about it. But the manner it was, and the speaker didn't also help matters, in my opinion, because when such a matter, you should have come out as the speaker to, if, for instance, I was in that chair, it was a very simple thing. I don't even have to bring it to the attention of the entire. You have been very unfortunate, and you have said it the way you have said it. I would simply call upon our sister, come in front, I whisper something, and I close the matter.
Yeah, but Ndugu Rugarama, the female member who brought this thing to the floor, if I got her right, she said that this particular senator has been talked to, and she has been walking around. It's like, actually, she was not in periods, but she was making a statement. And then the female member was saying, this kind of activism is not necessary, because this is a natural happening for all women, and it is understandable. But in that culture, you need now to be decent, to say, look, this has happened, cover yourself up, go and change, and come back. But even when she was called to the floor of parliament, I think she even made it worse. So I think,
I don't know if Rachel saw that, maybe she can give us her perspective, but I didn't get that aspect actually which you are bringing. Yeah. Now it is making, if really she was talked to in private, yeah, and she behaved the way you are saying she behaved, then that too is unfortunate. But you see, and this is what we said here, two wrongs don't make a right. We are saying even if somebody behaves in the manner that she, well, I don't think that 1, 2, 3 people, ladies, talked to her and she behaved intransigently.
Not that,
I doubt.
not,
Maybe the other one.
not that she didn't know that she had a blood-stained shorts, like it were. She knew. But she was trying to make a statement. And you know, I was digging backward into her activities. And surprisingly, yeah, because she's a nominated member of parliament, she's not an elected member of parliament, no surprises. Okay. But, Rachel, why are we wasting time when
Did you see that?
Not really. I make a point of not following foolishness.
No.
Well, I will not even spend up to a minute on this one. I don't want to be diverted. What is foolish is foolish. This woman says she's an activist, trying to show that many young girls in particular suffer on account of such incidents, and so she chose to forcefully propel this issue to the fore. My question is, where does it end? We have broken healthcare systems. Will she drag a dead body into parliament next? Where does it end? So for me, that is the end of my discussion. There's no need to prolong the foolishness.
What I find also, Comrade Mututa, the views of our sister Takari notwithstanding, sometimes, of course, certain things happen in life that people reach a point and they want to keep quiet about certain situations. I remember when we were entering here and there was a conversation as to whether we should actually be talking about homosexuality, we should be discussing these transgender, LGBTs, people of the African culture, and this is historical, have got nothing, and that doesn't mean that, for instance, there was no homosexuality, there was no, because I remember in the Ankole culture, such a group of people who would, a man sleeping with a man, of course, which was very rare, and even if it was going to be talked about, it would be talked about mutedly. They were called the Bitingwa. Now, such cases, you would find the local gatherings and parliament, if you like, of some sort at various levels, not wanting to discuss it. So I'm not surprised that something can be so repugnant that you would, for instance, get our sister Rachel here or a group, a section of people amongst ourselves reaching a point of saying, I even don't want to talk about this. But this is something that is amongst ourselves, and for instance, sin. Sin is so prevalent that not just the Bible talking about it, that it happened to the extent that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because of homosexuality. But even now, we have it so prevalent that if Christianity closed its eyes and other well-meaning people closed their eyes and said, we have had enough of this rubbish, we are not going to talk about it, where would we end? So sometimes, in my opinion, and I want to conclude on this, sometimes, in my opinion, it is very vital to address a problem, because through talking, I want to believe you expound on your knowledge in as far as appreciating the problem is concerned, and that way you devise ways, along with other colleagues, of solving the same problem. So talking about it, in my opinion, is a good thing. It depends on how and what you say about the problem.
I think even before, on that same issue, she has been an activist, a leading one at that, concerning menstrual hygiene. There is no, we cannot take from her credentials on that matter. What I am at variance with concerning this particular lady is the expression of her disgust with lack of action on that front. I asked a question before, where does it end? If you're into demonstrating the limitations of public responses to some of the more pertinent issues of the day. I ask again, will she drag a dead body to Parliament next because our healthcare systems are inadequate? Where does it end? How far can you go, or should you go, in terms of demonstrating your concerns is my only issue. So that Parliament is full of women. Should they all go on like that?
I don't know what they do in America. Probably, Comrade Mututa, we will bring in our brother Kaidi if he has gone through.
But you know, I know that it is a funny thing. Because as a senator, a member of the House at that level, you don't need to do what she was doing, but you can influence policy towards girl child. And I'm sure these are issues that are being addressed very well already. But if you think there are gaps, there is even a better way of putting it through policy than just walking around like an idiot. Because what again happens is that you make yourself look disgusting, and maybe the message will not be taken seriously as if it were put in the right way. But people sometimes do things differently, and for me that's why sometimes I have a problem with activism. That it sometimes it's like the whole world has come to an end and you're left with no option but only do that. But even as you do that, what are people thinking? Because by mere fact being a senator, it means that you are in a privileged position that can be used to help others who otherwise will not be helped. Maybe that's what she was trying to look at. I don't think it was the best thing, and to me, actually, like you said, it is foolishness and a disgust. We know people who are following us here. I heard from Ambassador Rebecca Amuge in Addis Ababa, I think, who is now facilitating the Uganda delegation, which is led by the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda at the session in Addis Ababa. We also are having people watching us from Sudan, from Bujumbura, from Kigali, Washington, Beijing, Ottawa, and South Africa. We are happy that you are with us and following with us what is going on in the rest of the continent of Africa. And of course, like I said, others following us all the way from the Caribbean and Brazil. So when you look at this issue, and of course it comes back to the issue which Rachel was talking about, women emancipation. When we talk of this emancipation, does it make sense to us when we are emancipated? Are we using this emancipation to drive an agenda which is to empower those who are already empowered or empower others that are not yet empowered? And so the discussions have been held about when this issue of like women members of parliament, those who are on affirmative. A woman is elected in parliament on affirmative action, but this woman is going to stay in that parliament until as long as it takes. Then, so is that affirmative action benefiting you, the beholder, or it has ripples to other people outside that? Of course, those are discussions that at least one point at some day we shall have to discuss on here. Told we have Ndugu Kaidi from the US, not yet online, and if he happens to come online, we shall have him talk to us too. So, Ndugu Garam, what's your take?
About affirmative action or the homosexuality?
Okay,
let me just give an overview of this affirmative action, and I will take it from the position of national resistance movement. When the NRM was coming into power, the initial points of concern were 10. They were expanded later to 15. I'm not sure how many they are now. We know for a fact that a number of them were worked on, things to do with peace and security, things to do with equality, women emancipation, because there were historical injustices. We know that for a fact, not just on the African continent, because we know that even in America, there was no vote for a woman. And when we were talking, you remember the human rights movements, when they were talking about the African person or an American of the African descent having a vote, then the argument was that there has got to be a vote, first and foremost, for the white woman. And we discussed here and agreed that there is nothing like something white as far as the person is concerned. We are only going to use it for purposes of the debate. Now, that within that context, therefore, we are still having differences, that even when the white woman was being discriminated and the black human race in America were terribly humiliated and discriminated against, then the debate still was that before you can allow a section of the African American people to access the ballot, the white woman should first access the ballot. Now, NRM was alive to the fact that the historical injustices against the gender called female were so much, and in order to address them, proportionately, of course, we were almost having zero representation in areas of politics by the women, and NRM said this should not be. We were having almost, when you read books like that one of Dr. Koburunga, Miriam Matembe, and other books like Professor Sylvia Tamare's writings, and other people who are accomplished in academics and other spheres of influence, you realize that there has been a historical injustices towards women in accessing education, in accessing health services, in accessing politics. And NRM made it a deliberate, there was a deliberate policy, and that is why you find that NRM as a political party, for instance, speaking for Uganda, had and still has a lot of presence of women amongst its ranks. Because when it comes to, for instance, political representation, you will have a situation whereby they will say you cannot have a committee without a certain person. A third of the what? Of women. Now, it doesn't matter. You see, there is an argument, but supposing they are not capable. No, when you put something in place, you always have those who are capable coming into, and capability is also constructed.
And relative.
Yes, it is ability. You can deliberately build capacity. So I think then when it comes to education, institutions like Makerere University had that 1.5 points that they would automatically give to the ladies entering the university. There has been a debate as to whether, and I think you talked about it, Comrade Mtuta here, as to whether that has transformed into any positive, meaningful impact to, say, the women cause, development of whatever nature. But I really would recommend that we get some research into that area. There is a need to study, since we introduced the affirmative action into our country. Since, for instance, proportionately speaking, there are increased numbers of women in our politics. How has that transformed the women cause in our politics? If the same thing is happening in Rwanda, that we have consistently had, for instance, women being Speaker of Parliament, being ministers, and how has that transformed the cause, the liberation of the women or the girl child, for instance, out of things to do with the aspiring to be like so and so, qualitatively and quantitatively, how has that movement, how has that affirmative action helped the cause of women? And maybe also, but I want to believe, of course, since it is not today's topic, but I want to believe that in a way that has helped, socio-economically speaking, the cause of women, certainly. And that doesn't take away the fact that those who are riding on the so-called affirmative action for purposes of propagating their own interests, and they have long abandoned the cause of women. It doesn't take it away. We have got so many private organizations which are highly sponsored by foreign interests, and they have almost done nothing to the women cause. But also within the movement, the crusade for emancipation, affirmative action for women, we have got those sincere ones who have contributed meaningfully and liberated the girl child from the shackles that they used to get experienced to in the past. Now, coming to the topic for today, the homosexuality or the LGBTs, the transgenders, they have so many names that sometimes you just get confused. And because Africa has been a beehive, historically speaking, of the interests of others, ranging from colonialism, then slave trade, or whereby people who thought they were better than others came and captured our great-grandfathers, took them to work on the sugar plantations and that kind of stuff. We have had foreign interests on the African continent taking center stage, that almost all our values, all our culture as a people have been brutalized. Now, no wonder that we had not just colonialism, because colonialism came with things to do with Christianity. The Christianity, which certainly has got nothing to do with the African way of doing things.
Actually, it was not Christianity, it was religion.
Religion, because religion, yes, when you look at it from the broader perspective, because Islam is not Christianity anyway. I was narrowing it down, unfortunately. But you find that if, for instance, Islam came, Islam is basically Arabic, and for them they don't make a pretense about it, because what happens is that until recently, really, any communication to Allah which was not going to be done in Arabic, then that was no communication to God. And almost the same thing happened here, because they found the African person worshipping using the traditional instruments and the type of dancing, and they said that was satanic. Until not long ago, some churches, in Church of Uganda, for instance, in the Catholic church, certain instruments were not allowed to be used. And they were associated with satanic movements from the African people. Certain types of dance are not permitted. That God must be worshipped when you are dressed in a certain manner. And if that certainly is not the dress code of the African person, it has got to be the white man's dress code, but you must appear in a certain dress code, which is certainly not you as the African person, in order to communicate with that creator. That creator must also, until the Bible was started being translated, had to be communicated to in English. And the praising, to praise that creator, you must do it also using certain instruments which were not yours. Now, that begs the question, is that particular God there for ours? There are $1 million questions there. But what is of great importance is that, and I think what we must interrogate is that just recently, this has been, of course, in the papers, it has been in the other media, but recently the Ugandan media has been awash with the statements of His Excellency the President, whereby he said that the Europeans and their cousins do not want to listen to other views. They want to impose their own views on others historically, and they are used to that. And that Africa, and Uganda in particular, is not going to follow a people who are lost. That was a powerful statement. Now, before, just maybe to conclude here, before we also had the Archbishop or the Church of Uganda, Dr. Kazimba Mugaru. I think it was the commemoration was slightly before of this public holiday of the one-time magnanimous, the late Archbishop Janan Wum, where he came out strongly and said, we are not going to be party to this lost community who think that a man can go with a fellow man, a woman can go with a fellow woman, and they will have a union which is blessed by God, because that's not what the Bible says, if we must go with the Bible. Now, that was not new, because we know that those other similar incidences had happened when our speaker then, Auntie Madame Rebecca Kadaga, was having the Interparliamentary Union conference, and they wanted to smuggle certain items on the agenda to do with LGTB. The Asia and Africa vehemently rejected, and it never went on the order paper, and you could see the joint decision of the two continents, which are not necessarily, but at least you can see that there is certain value which they share. Earlier on, there was our bishop, Archbishop Ntagari, as he was then, also coming out to say to her, we have got front runners like the late Comrade Gabriel Mugabe, the president of Zimbabwe, who said to her with this business of a man with a man, a woman with a woman, if you can only prove to me that a man and a man and a woman being together in the so-called holy matrimony, you can procreate. You see, it's a natural flow. Then the president was here saying that it has been scientifically proven that there is no such a thing as being born bisexual. It is just confusion. So all that, and of course we have got so many examples where people of different races have come up to make an argument that this is a deliberate effort by a certain group of people, especially the Europeans and Americans, who have attacked the values, the culture of America and some good parts of Asia, and the point is to make sure that they control they have got a negative impact on the population for reasons which, time allowing, we shall go into.
I think for me, the most concerning thing about this state of affairs is that people insist that it's a human right. And I, as a woman of color, continually am offended by people who equate the color of my skin to a perversion. The United Nations in particular has been very keen to always smuggle this agenda onto the table whenever people sit around and say, look, I'm being kept from accessing education because of the color of my skin. The color of one's skin is not a failing. It is not a sin. It is not, it's not a mutation. However, when we talk about homosexuality in particular, And that is really one of the things that are center stage in Uganda at this time. The effort, of course, to counter this message is being underwritten by the president himself, his wife, Mrs. Museveni, and a number of other political actors. We, as the people of this country, have been slow to understand the gravity of this matter. But what we are saying is, when the United Nations and other international bodies seek to elevate what is not right, what is not normal, what is not proper, then we, the people of Africa, have no choice but to push back. We're at a time when most political leaders are at a loss because efforts to counter this narrative are now tied to aid, they are tied to interventions of various kinds. So whenever these issues come to the fore, if, for example, someone from Kenya or Sudan went to the World Bank or the United Nations and talked about their need for clean drinking water, someone in a most astonishing way will say, well, I have the money for water, but unless you agree that a man going with a man is nice, fitting, proper, and should be front and center of what you're doing, then we cannot do any business. Ndugu Rugarama, you pointed out that our very existence is under threat. There is a common proverb or saying among the African peoples that what does not grow dies. If you're in unions where children cannot be produced, it is in a matter of time before that population is decimated. But even more concerning for me is the fact that something that is unacceptable on a good day is what someone is trying to make me believe that I, who is taking the proper place, should be ashamed, should not talk, should not be active against this. No, it is a time to take a stance, and us in Uganda, fortunately, have a leadership who is clear that this sort of thing cannot happen. We cannot say we are Pan-African while overlooking the fact that this is the latest assault on all of Africa. The amount of resources that are being sunk into this cause, the propaganda, the twisting of the facts, saying in Uganda, for example, there are many people who have left this country because the people of Uganda say we don't want this. Then they claim to be tortured, they claim all sorts of things. But I don't know of anyone, even the fact that we disagree with this whole thing very, very vehemently, I don't know of anyone who has beaten anyone to pulp because of this way of doing things. But we shall remain resolute that it is un-African, it is ungodly, it is untenable, and a danger to all of humanity. That is just how heavy this thing is.
Yeah, we look at a number of issues, especially on the African continent, when it comes to resources. Last time here we were talking about racism, and it was discussed and agreed and known that part of the problem of racism is the access to resources. That for those who are able to marshal resources can discriminate others and mistreat them based on their color or their social status, because they do then have resources. And for me, when I look at some of these problems, I think they are more bigger problems behind the problem that we may be looking at. And my specific interest is to do with the church. Of course, to one point, Ndugu Rugarama was saying that the church, the Christians, or Christianity or something, that's a point he raised, that should not keep quiet when some of these things are being advocated and promoted. But then the problem comes in when the church is the one promoting. Then what do? Because the church, I think the fusion of in the past of the especially in those economies and civilizations, that the church was part of the government establishment, meant a lot, that whatever government decided was what the church had decided, or what the church decided was what the government would have decided. But I'm more happy that the church of the Anglican Church, the Church of England, has been brought to this, to understand that the African group is not interested in what they are promoting. When the Archbishop of Canterbury sits down to say, you know, you see, these are our people, our God, these people, we are not discriminating them. I heard a clip when Pastor Sempa was having an argument with someone, saying that why do you hate these people so much? So for them, it is a hate when you talk about something. And I've seen also this thing come up of, you are being judgmental, that you are charging me, or something like, you are discriminating me. So I think some of these issues we need to be clear, especially when it comes to policing, because I saw when the other time the law was being proposed in Uganda, which they called the Bahati thing. And you could see the movements in the Western capitals, people trying to come down here to say look. But I think the government of Uganda was very clear on that. I've also liked what the government of Rwanda is pushing. I think Ghana is also doing the same thing. They are advising that their church should cut links with the Canterbury, so that we talked about this thing that Africa should be a value-led society,
which it was.
Yes, more than looking at the human rights, because values are the real rights.
Actually, rights are just a small section.
Yes, of the values.
Of the values.
Yes. So if you don't have values, then you don't even have, because if you don't have values, it means you have no bearing. You don't belong to anyone. You have no even religion. You don't even have where you come from. You don't have anything. So
I think for me, the greatest, the most important strategy that these people have been employing, as of course there's been the guilt trip, talking about, oh, you hate me, to close down the discussion. This is not about hate. This is about enlightened self-interest.
Why should I like you?
Well, that aside, one of the things that they've also done, like I said before, is to equate normal with abnormal. Abnormal remains abnormal. That is why when we find people who have deviated from the norm, and we talk about people who are murderers, people who are any manner of evil that you can imagine, we don't say they are not human beings. But there is a way that we handle people who have deviated from the norm. We don't pretend that these kinds of behavior are good, proper, and fitting. I think one of the things that I can use repeatedly, of course there are many other evils, but one of the things that I can refer to easily is the question of murder. I think there is no society on this globe that looks at someone who has murdered another normally. I don't think that society exists. Everybody acknowledges at the outset that there is a problem with the thinking of this person. There is a problem with the outlook of this individual. They don't say you are subhuman because you murdered someone. And we also don't say that people who are homosexuals are subhuman. We don't say that. We don't say they are mad. We say they have a problem. One issue that I have with the promotion of homosexuality is the pretense that it is a good thing. The pretense that it is the same thing as fighting for the improvement of livelihoods, for example. When someone says they cannot get access to water, which they need for their very lives, because of the fact that they are brown-skinned, please do not put that at the same level as someone who has a sexual perversion, saying that they are at the same level starting out. I'm not saying they should be denied water. I am saying the perversion does not allow them to compete with someone for water at the same level. You cannot say that the reason why you need water is because you're a murderer. No, you need water because you're a human being. The United Nations and other agencies are trying to remove the barriers between evil and good. They're working around the clock to collapse normal sensibilities by killing the fact that moral conscience, the normal morality of a human being does not agree with this thing, even if you're not religious. Okay. For example, I'll give you an example. China, they're generally not religious. But humanity, a human, naturally, is repelled by this sort of thing.
We'll continue it from there. We're going for a break now, and we shall be back shortly. Don't go away. There's a lot to discuss about this issue, and I think at one point you will also get views from elsewhere. I think in Ndugu, KD, if possible, will be online, but if not, we'll still have it some other day anyway. So don't go away. We're going down for a break shortly, but we shall be back. Thank you.
Secretariat.
One-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwao.
A weekly face-to-face conversation focusing on accountability, inspiration, information, and sensitization of the public from the various sources such as inspirational profiles.
Having a disability is not inability.
Professional guidance.
There is no special antiretroviral therapy that is given specifically for discordant couples.
And of course, politics.
Don't you see anywhere that you would give a credit in the fight against COVID?
My role as the owner of the country is not to, be preoccupied by giving credit to my server.
We have said that if we are to talk to General Museveni, there must be certain conditions in place.
Is it true that you paid 5 million shillings to MPs that voted for Anita Monga and Tayebo?
That is laughable. Why would we pay when we have nominated them as SEC?
Every party has been represented in Uganda's parliament for 10 years. We only by one MP, you yourself and my daughter, Susan.
Every Friday 9 p.m. it's One-on-One with Michael Jordan Lukomwa on UBC TV, inspiring Uganda.
It's true that people say that when I wash and you wash your hands with soap, we'll have less infections as Ugandans. After all, it's hands that handle money. It's hands that feed us. Hands that prepare soil for farming. Hands that we use to learn. And hands that we use for food.
When you wash and you wash hands with soap, it means clean hands for all. This is a message from the National Hand Washing Secretariat.
Social justice, and other things. Now we want to request Your Excellency to give attention to what you have already started, because we have the homosexuals and other voices attacking our nation. We request that that bill which was signed, it is against homosexuality, it should be revisited and be signed again.
Congratulate the Ugandan believers for rejecting homosexuality. And for your Lutela, Uganda, these Europeans are really there's some issue with these Europeans. They don't listen. But it's good that you said please. We have been telling them please, this problem of homosexuality is not something that you should normalize and celebrate. I told them that it is true that there were some few homosexuals here before the Europeans came here. I had heard of some few stories. But it was clear that this was a deviation from normal.
Yeah, those are the statements that were being made by the president and the archbishop, I think, during the function of the Archbishop Luomo in northern part of the country. So these are some of the statements, the sentiments that the African leaders, I think, were using Uganda as an example, but many African leaders, I think, hold this view, with the exception of a few. I know maybe similar statements cannot be made in a country like South Africa and some of them, but I know the majority of the African continent, that's what the feeling and the thinking is. Nduguru Garama.
Yeah, thank you so much. Our sister here, Takari, said something, maybe let me start from there, that we have got this society, our brothers and sisters who wish not to be in any way associated to us because they believe they are a superior human race, have consistently brought this issue of LGTB or homosexuality as a human right. And they go ahead to impress it upon the rest of the people that if, for instance, you come up to defend what you are in as far as the normal, then you are looked at as segregating against them. What happened, especially during the time of Barack Obama's presidency, there was a systematic movement across the African continent as part of the American policy to, one, make sure that via legislation, all the African countries who had the element, the legislation element doing away with the homosexuality, were prevented either from actualizing it, or if it was already on the law books, it was removed. And we saw what happened, to the extent that it is said at one time, some of the African presidents, including ours, when he went to America, they almost denied him accommodation. Now, these movements, the homosexuality movements in Europe and America, and the reason is because somebody would say, but why is it such a strong force? Why do they put in a lot of money? When you look at the African woman and the African man, either on the African continent or away from the African continent, the fertility rates are so high that in combating the increasing numbers, for instance, in America, of the African American, as they call them, the incarceration rates of the youthful age, the African American person, male in America, America has got the highest rate of the African American male youth in prison. Why? Simple. I should not let you to be free, create a family, multiply at the rate at which you are multiplying, because it is feared. There was a study conducted in one of the universities, Harvard or other related universities around there. If Kaidu was through, he would tell us. And all it said was that at the rate at which the African American is multiplying, if we do not put in place certain mechanisms to contain that, the white race is going to be wiped out at a certain point in time. What it means, therefore, is that by exporting homosexuality, putting in a lot of money to make sure that it comes, because homosexuality in itself, lesbianism, bisexual, whatever they want, transgender, whatever they want to call themselves, if not heterosexual, then inability to reproduce, recreate yourself, you reach a point whereby nature takes its course and you die off. That's why there is a deliberate policy from that group of people who will do anything from the point of legislation, moralization, among others, to come make incursions into sub-Saharan Africa and Africa at large, to ensure that they recruit from amongst ourselves with a view in mind that at time T, we are going to have population, because that is smooth, calculated population control. That we have arrested you at this point, we can give it, they are not tired, they will not tire. You give it something like 20, 30, even if you said 50 years, and would have reduced this population by a certain percentage. That is the mission. A population that is not growing, because Africa, and Uganda in particular, for instance, has got the youngest population, the second youngest population on the globe. If you export homosexuality and its evils, you would have arrested the growth in terms of multiplication of that population. You would have checked on its productivity, and that way you are sure on impacting negatively on the economic growth. The point I'm making is this, that the agenda of those who are fronting homosexuality is to make sure, because they certainly know the evils. They know the evils associated with this. And there is nothing to do with I was born here, because that has been subjected to research. And you see, what happens is that when the research, the narrative that we are talking about here, is not counter-checked, you are bound to go with misleading results. At one time, the results which were, you will permit me just to say this. At one time, the results which were put out in the public, that the lighter-skinned person, whites, if you like, were superior in terms of intelligence than the dark-skinned person, the African and the kind. If it went unchecked with other forms of research, it would have passed. Never mind that there are those who actually believe that, which is a lie. In the same way, if we didn't have contrary research to the effect that, look, homosexuality is not scientifically proven that somebody is born a homosexual, we would go by the misleading results that actually homosexuality, somebody can be born a homosexual. Now that we have got the research that there is no such a thing, you are either born a man or a woman. To the extent that even those who are born, babies who are born with features, the two features, the one of the features must be stronger. They call it an abnormality. And they will work on it, and you will find that one organ is the one which is superior than the other, and you will certainly be one, not both of them or none of them. So what we are having now as a consequence of promoting, and like the president said, he was willing, and I think he was trying to be decent really there, you know, that I would accept and listen to you if I had been given scientific findings that actually this is how you are born. But such findings are not there. All that is there is a lie. Then two, he says that if, for instance, it came to a situation whereby you are a homosexual and you are just keeping it to yourself, you are not promoting it. Our trouble is that we have got an aggressive and vicious effort from the members of the homosexuality group who are exporting their vices into our continent, especially the sub-Saharan region, for purposes of making sure that they arrest the multiplication of our people, and by doing so, They check the population, they check its productivity, and they arrest our development. And we are saying, the churches are saying on the African continent, sections of the people are saying that we are not going to have any of that. Whether you say that we are now judging you or segregating you, after all, we are not the first and we shall not be the last to segregate or to judge others.
Rachel.
I think I'll come at it from a different point of view. Not point of view, but a different angle. In 2009, there was a report, no, actually a complaint, a human rights complaint, filed by one of these groups against the Canadian government. This group was also in Canada. And they said that the statistics concerning life expectancy in their community was poor, which makes me wonder, were they blaming Canada for allowing them to go their way? That aside, research abounds that homosexuality is detrimental to life in general. Research abounds that it affects mental health. Research abounds concerning the fact that there are higher incidents of certain kinds of cancer among gay or homosexual men in particular. Diseases such as hepatitis are spiked in this population group. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse, tobacco abuse, mental illness, among other things. So it is not advantageous to pursue this way of doing things. That is conveniently tucked away as these individuals push ahead with their so-called futuristic outlook. They even went ahead to destroy the word gay, and in fact I never used that to describe this community. Gay originally means carefree, happy-go-lucky. There is nothing happy-go-lucky about the depression, the anxiety, the cancer, the sexually transmitted diseases, the isolation, the tension and distress that comes from committing to going down this path. In the short term, the children to whom this is sold are never told what kind of life they can expect. But like I said, this complaint was out of Canada, and it is on record that people who engage continually in homosexuality have a reduced lifespan of 20 to 30 years. It is factual. These outcomes are already on record where it has been practiced for a long time. But I think going forward, and that is one of the things that we labor to expound on this particular platform, is that not everything pushed by Western capitals is good. In fact, there is nothing, it is not automatic for a position to be good and one that comes out of enlightenment just because it came out of America. We, the people of Africa, have to know that age-old values, especially ones that have worked very well amongst us, can also work into the foreseeable future and beyond. It is a time to realize that not every agenda is good, wholesome, or even healthy. When Honorable Bahati first introduced this legislation in 2009, he withstood a lot of pressure. And as a politician, he was alone. He was quite isolated, actually. All kinds of warfare was waged against him in European capitals in particular. They called him all sorts of names. Among them, they said that the culture of Africa was a problem. They said we should concentrate on our poverty, for example, and leave this evil to go unchecked. But we are saying that we are able to know what is good and what is not good, whether you have the money or whether you don't have the money.
And homosexuality is also poverty of the mind.
And as I said, they've attacked the fact that mental illness among this group is higher than the standard amounts of mental illness. So you have to go over the edge in order to embrace this way of doing things. But we are saying that we also have a way and we have the means to actually reason and see that this is detrimental for the African cause. I'm glad that this time, I'm actually glad to be living in Uganda, because I lived in America, and that in those capitals, the concept of saying homosexuality is bad, it is sin, it is evil, and it is wickedness will cause you to be abused around the clock, will cause you to be subjected to all sorts of pressure. So it is a good thing that there are people in this world who are still saying, no, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, panelists on this show. And like we said from the beginning, that the views that we normally have here are views that we get from, of course, sometimes our views, but also from the rest of you, the viewers who follow us, and many other agencies that we work with in collecting this data. For now, we'll be stopping here, and we'll be continuing next Friday, next week. And please be with us. Don't stop here. UBC is still coming up with more interesting programs, educative programs for today. And for the best of the weekend, we will wish you. Otherwise, let's be again here with you next week on Friday, same time and same program. The Pan-African Friday will be coming your way. Thank you so much.